They pulled him over for no reason, and 5 minutes later, a teenage boy was in handcuffs on the side of the road. Shocked silence. Ethan was just driving his sick grandmother to the hospital when police lights exploded behind their car. "I didn't do anything wrong," he cried, trembling voice. But the officers said 3 words that changed everything. "You match the suspect." Cold tone. His grandmother begged them to stop. "Please, he's just a child," she whispered, crying softly. Crowds gathered, phones recorded. People judged him before knowing the truth, humiliated. Inside the police car, Ethan thought his life was over. "They think I'm a criminal," he whispered, heartbroken. But when officers checked the security footage again, they discovered something that would shock everyone. Suspenseful pause. What they found proved Ethan was innocent and revealed how one mistake can destroy a family in seconds. Powerful tension. Stay till the end because this story will change how you see justice forever. Strong warning. Welcome to Heroic Stories Hub, where real pain turns into real courage, confident and strong. Here we share emotional stories of injustice, hope, and powerful life lessons that touch the heart and open the mind. Inspiring tone. If you believe truth should always win and courage should never be silent, then this story is for you, determined and emotional. Stop right there. The sharp scream of sirens shattered the peaceful afternoon, and flashing red and blue lights flooded the inside of the small silver car. Ethan's hands tightened around the steering wheel, his knuckles turning white. His grandmother, Rose, sat beside him, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. "What's happening?" Rose whispered. I don't know," Ethan replied, his breath coming fast. He slowly pulled the car to the side of the road. His heart pounded so loudly he thought the officers could hear it. The quiet street that had felt safe just seconds ago now felt dangerous and cold. A police officer stepped out of the cruiser with long, fast strides. His face was serious, his hand resting near his belt. "Driver, turn off the engine and keep your hands where I can see them." Ethan swallowed hard and did exactly as told. "Yes, sir," he said. Rose leaned toward the window. "Officer, my grandson is taking me to the hospital. I felt dizzy," she said gently. The officer did not answer her. His eyes stayed locked on Ethan. "License and registration. Step out of the vehicle." Ethan opened the door slowly, every movement feeling heavy and slow, like he was walking through water. The warm sunlight touched his face, but he felt frozen inside. "I didn't do anything wrong," he whispered to himself. As soon as his feet touched the ground, another police car arrived with its siren screaming. Then another. 3 officers surrounded him in seconds. One of them grabbed Ethan's arm firmly. "Hands behind your back." "Wait, why?" Ethan cried out. "You match the description of a robbery suspect," the officer said. Rose pushed her door open and struggled to step out. "No, please, he's just a boy," she shouted, crying softly. An officer held her back gently but firmly. "Ma'am, please stay in the vehicle." Ethan felt his arms pulled behind him. Cold metal handcuffs clicked shut around his wrists. The sound echoed in his ears like a gunshot. "I didn't steal anything," Ethan shouted. "I was with my grandmother the whole time." People began to slow their cars and stare. Some pulled out their phones. Others whispered. Ethan could feel their eyes burning into him. "Look at him," someone murmured. Ethan's face flushed with shame. "I just wanted to take my grandma to the hospital," he thought. Rose pressed her hand against the window of the car. "God, please protect my grandson," she whispered, praying and crying. One officer searched the car roughly, opening doors and checking under the seats. "What are you looking for?" Ethan asked. "Stolen items," the officer replied. His chest felt tight, his thoughts raced. What if they don't believe me? What if they take me away? Another officer spoke into his radio. "We have the suspect detained," he said. Those words hit Ethan like a punch. "Suspect?" he whispered. Rose suddenly felt weak and leaned back against her seat. "I can't breathe," she said softly. "Ma'am, stay calm," an officer said. Ethan tried to turn toward her, but the handcuffs held him in place. "Grandma, I'm here!" he cried. They opened the back door of the police car. "Get in," an officer ordered. Ethan hesitated. "Please, I didn't do anything wrong," he begged. The officer pushed him gently but firmly into the back seat. The door slammed shut with a loud bang. The inside of the car felt small and dark. The metal bars on the window made him feel like an animal in a cage. His breath became uneven. "I can't breathe! I can't breathe!" he whispered. Outside, he saw his grandmother through the glass. She was crying, holding her chest. "Don't take him," Rose said to the officers, desperately crying. One officer looked uncomfortable. Another avoided her eyes. Ethan pressed his forehead against the window. "I'm sorry, Grandma," he mouthed. Memories flooded his mind, driving her to the store, making her tea, helping her walk. "I was just trying to help," he thought. The police car started moving. The siren wailed again, louder than before. Rose watched as the car drove away. Her hands shook violently. "My baby," she whispered, crying softly. Inside the police car, Ethan stared at his red, cuffed wrists. They burned with pain. "Why is this happening to me?" he asked out loud. The officer in front did not answer. As they drove, people on the sidewalk stared. Some pointed, some shook their heads. "He must have done something bad," someone said. Ethan closed his eyes. Tears rolled down his cheeks. "They think I'm a criminal," he thought. The car finally stopped at the police station. The building looked tall and cold, like a giant wall blocking his freedom. The door opened. "Get out," an officer said. Ethan stepped out slowly, his legs weak. Cameras clicked from someone across the street. They walked him inside. The hallway smelled like metal and cleaning liquid. The sound of his footsteps echoed loudly. "Sit here," an officer ordered, pushing him into a chair. "Sit here," an officer ordered, pushing him into a chair. "I want my grandma," he whispered. Minutes felt like hours. He heard officers talking behind a glass wall. "He fits the description," one said, "but something feels off," another replied. Ethan stared at the floor. "Please, God," he whispered. When Rose was finally brought in, she walked slowly with her cane. Her face was pale and wet with tears. "There he is," she said, relieved but crying. Ethan looked up and broke down. "I was so scared," he said, crying hard. Rose held his cuffed hands. "You did nothing wrong," she said, loving and strong. One officer watched them quietly. At that moment, the fear in the room was thick. Ethan's future felt uncertain. One mistake, one wrong decision, and his life could change forever. And as the door closed behind them, Ethan realized something terrifying. The truth didn't matter yet. Only what the police believed did. The room was cold and silent. The walls were gray, and the light above Ethan flickered softly. His hands were still cuffed in front of him, resting on the metal table. Every small sound felt loud. The ticking clock, the footsteps in the hallway, the distant radio voices of officers. I didn't do anything, Ethan whispered to himself. The door opened suddenly. 2 officers walked in. One held a clipboard, the other folded his arms. "Name?" the Toller officer asked. "Ethan Miller," he replied. "Age?" 17. The officer raised an eyebrow. "Where were you at 3:30 p.m.?" he asked suspiciously. "With my grandmother. We were driving to the hospital," Ethan said quickly, desperate and honest. "Why?" "She felt dizzy and scared," he answered, worried. The officer wrote something down. "You know a gas station was robbed 2 miles from where you were stopped?" he asked accusingly. Ethan's eyes widened. "No, sir, I don't even go to gas stations alone," he said, frightened. The second officer leaned closer to Ethan's face. "Someone said the suspect was a young male in a hoodie," he said, pressuring him. "I wear a hoodie every day," Ethan replied, confused. "That doesn't make me a thief." The door opened again. Rose was slowly guided into the room by a female officer. She looked tired and pale, leaning heavily on her cane. "Grandma!" Ethan cried out, relieved but crying. "My baby," Rose said, walking toward him, weak and loving. She touched his face gently. "Are you hurt?" she asked in a panicked voice. "No, Grandma, just scared," he said, choking up. One officer cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we need to ask you some questions," he said formally. Rose nodded. "I will tell you everything," she said, determined. "Where were you and your grandson this afternoon?" the officer asked, calm but firm. "At home at first," Rose said. "I felt dizzy, so Ethan drove me to the hospital." "Do you have proof?" the officer asked, doubtfully. Rose opened her purse with shaking hands. Papers fell out onto the table. "These are my hospital papers," she said, nervous. The officer picked them up and looked through them. "These are from today," he said, surprised. Ethan felt a small spark of hope. "See, I told you," he said, hopeful. But another officer entered the room holding a tablet. "The robbery happened at 3:32 p.m., he said. "Witness says the suspect ran toward a silver car." Ethan's heart dropped. "We drive a silver car," he whispered, fearful. Rose grabbed Ethan's hand tightly. "He was with me," she said loudly, defensive and strong. "You cannot blame him for someone else's crime." The officer on the tablet played a short video clip from the gas station camera. The image was blurry. A person in dark clothes ran across the screen. "That's not me," Ethan said quickly, desperate. The officer paused the video. "The suspect has a tattoo on his neck," he said, realizing something. Everyone looked at Ethan. One officer walked around behind him and pulled down the collar of his hoodie slightly. "There's no tattoo here," he said, confused. Another officer leaned in closer. "No scar, no mark, nothing," he said, surprised. They looked back at the screen. "The suspect is taller, too," the tablet officer said, doubtfully. Ethan felt his chest loosen a little. "So you believe me now?" he asked, hopeful but shaking. "We're still checking," the first officer replied, cautiously. Rose suddenly coughed and held her chest. "I need water," she said, weak and dizzy. A female officer rushed to her side. "Sit down, ma'am," she said, concerned. Ethan panicked. "Please help her," he cried, desperate. They gave Rose water and helped her breathe slowly. "I just got scared," Rose whispered, exhausted. Ethan watched her closely, his eyes filled with tears. "This is my fault," he thought, guilty and heartbroken. Minutes passed in heavy silence. The officers stepped outside to talk. Ethan could hear their voices through the door. "He doesn't match the tattoo description," one said, uncertain. "And his grandmother's story checks out," another replied, thinking hard. We rushed this, a third voice admitted, ashamed. The door opened again. The same officer who had handcuffed Ethan stepped inside. You're not the suspect, he said quietly, regretful. Ethan froze. I'm not? He asked, shocked and hopeful. No, the officer said. We reviewed the footage again. The real suspect had a neck tattoo and was wearing a black jacket. You were wearing a light hoodie. Rose covered her mouth with her hand. Thank God, she whispered, relieved and crying. The officer stepped closer and removed Ethan's handcuffs. The metal clicked open. Ethan rubbed his wrists slowly. Red marks were visible. I thought my life was over, he said, crying softly. Rose hugged him tightly despite her weak body. I thought they took you away forever, she said, heartbroken. One officer lowered his head. We made a mistake, he said, ashamed. You were wrongfully detained. Ethan looked at him with watery eyes. You didn't listen to me at first, he said, hurt. I know, the officer replied, with regret, and I am sorry. Rose spoke up slowly. He is a good boy, she said, strong but tired. He takes care of me. He does not deserve this. The room became quiet again. No one argued. Ethan stood up slowly, still shaky. So, can we go home now? He asked, unsure and hopeful. Yes, the officer said, soft tone. You're free to leave. Ethan took a deep breath for the first time since the arrest. I can breathe again, he whispered, relieved. As they walked toward the door, Ethan looked back at the table where he had been questioned. That chair felt like prison, he thought, traumatized. Rose held his arm tightly as they walked. I will never forget this day, she said, emotional. Ethan nodded. Neither will I, he replied, serious and broken. Behind them, the officers watched silently. The mistake had been corrected, but the fear and pain remained. And as Ethan stepped out of the room, he realized something deeply painful. Being innocent didn't stop him from being treated like a criminal. The truth saved him, but not before fear had changed him forever. The evening sky was painted with orange and purple as Ethan and Rose stepped outside the police station. The heavy doors closed behind them with a deep sound that felt final. The air outside felt different, lighter, but still cold with fear. Rose held Ethan's arm tightly as they walked toward their car. Let's go home, my child, she said. Ethan nodded but did not speak. His legs felt weak and his heart still raced. Every sound made him jump. When they reached the car, Rose sat down slowly. Ethan opened her door carefully and made sure she was safe inside. I thought I was going to lose you, Rose said. Ethan swallowed hard. I thought I was never coming back, he replied. They sat in silence for a few seconds. The parking lot lights flickered on and shadows stretched across the ground. Ethan finally started the engine and drove away slowly. As they passed the station gate, Ethan looked back through the mirror. That place felt like a nightmare, he whispered. Rose placed her hand on his arm. You are safe now, she said. On the drive home, Ethan kept seeing the handcuffs in his mind. The sound of them clicking shut echoed in his head again and again. Grandma, he said suddenly. What if they didn't believe us? Rose closed her eyes for a moment. Then God would still know the truth, she said. Ethan did not answer. He felt angry and scared at the same time. When they reached home, Rose slowly walked inside with her cane. Ethan followed her and locked the door behind them. The house felt quiet and safe, but something had changed. The walls that once felt warm now felt small. Rose sat on the couch and wiped her face with a cloth. You should rest, she said. Ethan sat on the floor in front of her. "I don't feel normal anymore," he admitted. Rose reached out and touched his hair. "You went through fear," she said. "That fear will pass." But that night, fear did not pass. When Ethan lay in bed, every time he closed his eyes, he saw police lights and heard shouting. "Hands behind your back," the voice repeated in his head. He turned in his bed again and again. "I didn't do anything wrong," he whispered. Tears slid down his face in the dark. "Why did this happen to me?" In the next room, Rose prayed quietly. "Please protect my grandson," she said. At the next morning, Ethan felt heavy and tired. His wrists still showed red marks from the handcuffs. He stared at them for a long time. "These marks are real," he thought. At school, everything felt different. Students whispered when he walked into class. "Did you hear?" one student said. "He got arrested yesterday." Another laughed. "Wow, criminal boy," he said. Ethan froze in his seat. His chest burned with shame. "That's not true," his friend Marcus said loudly. "He didn't do anything." Ethan looked at Marcus with grateful eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. During lunch, a teacher called Ethan aside. "Are you okay?" she asked. "I think so," Ethan replied. But inside, he did not feel okay at all. That afternoon, Rose received a letter in the mail from the police department. Her hands shook as she opened it. "Ethan, come here," she called. Ethan walked slowly to her side. "What is it?" he asked. Rose read aloud. "We sincerely apologize for the wrongful detention of your grandson." Her voice cracked. "They admit they were wrong," she said. Ethan closed his eyes. "An apology doesn't erase what happened," he said. Rose nodded. "No, but it shows the truth came out," she said. That night, Ethan sat alone in his room thinking about everything. "They saw me and thought I was dangerous," he said to himself. He remembered how scared his grandmother looked in the car. "She thought she lost me," he whispered. Something inside him changed. The next day, Ethan stood in front of his class during a school discussion. His hands shook, but he raised them anyway. "I was arrested for something I didn't do," he said. The room became quiet. "I learned something," he continued. "Being innocent doesn't protect you from fear. Only truth does." Some students looked down, others listened closely. "I don't want anyone else to feel what I felt," he said. When he sat down, his teacher nodded. "That took courage," she said. At home, Rose hugged him tightly. "You spoke with your heart," she said. Weeks passed, but the memory stayed. Ethan began reading books about justice and law. "I want to help people who are treated unfairly," he said. Rose smiled softly. "You turned pain into purpose," she said. One evening, Ethan and Rose sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Do you still feel afraid?" Rose asked. Ethan thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he replied, "but now I know I survived it." Rose squeezed his hand. "You are stronger than you think," she said. Ethan looked at the sky and took a deep breath. "That day changed me," he said. "But it also taught me something important." Rose listened quietly. "No one should be judged before the truth is known," Ethan said. "And no one should feel alone when they are innocent." Rose nodded slowly. "Pain can teach the heart," she said. As the sun disappeared, Ethan felt something new inside him, not fear, but purpose. The night he was arrested would never leave his memory, but it no longer controlled him. Instead, it became the reason he chose to stand for truth. And as he held his grandmother's hand, Ethan understood the final lesson of that terrible day. Fear can arrive without warning, but courage can rise even faster.